Charly, before we get into it, I do want to play this video of Riley talking with Senator Josh Hawley from the state of Missouri, talking about her experience when she was forced to compete with Leah Thomas. Here is Riley Gaines with the Senate.
You were talking about just the incredible surprise, shall I say, to put it gently, of finding a biological man, a 6'4" biological man in your locker room and having to accept that without being asked about it, without being told about it even. What was that like for you? Tell us about that.
Again, we only became aware we would be undressing next to a man was when we had to see a man undressing while we were simultaneously undressing. And so I immediately left the locker room and I went up to one of the officials on the pool deck and I said, what are the guidelines to allow a man into our locker room? I know the guidelines for the competition, but what are the guidelines for the locker room? And he so nonchalantly said back, oh, we actually got around this by making locker rooms unisex. And so I'm thinking to myself in these brief moments, first and foremost, you just admitted this is a male by acknowledging how you had to change your rules to make the locker rooms unisex. You acknowledge that we do not share the same sex, first and foremost. Secondly, unisex. Any man could have walked into our locker room, any coach, any official, any man who wanted to would have had full reins to, and bare minimum, we weren't forewarned about it. And that's the traumatizing part. Of course, the experience in and of the locker room itself is traumatizing, but I think for me, it was so easy for them to dismiss our rights to privacy. Senator Durbin, in your opening statement, you had mentioned this rhetoric. It's, you had mentioned that, what message does it send to trans individuals? And my combat to that is, what message does this send to women, to young girls who are denied of these opportunities? So easily their rights to privacy and safety thrown out of the window to protect a small population, protect one group as long as they're happy. What about us? That is the overall general consensus of how we all felt in that locker room.
And Charly, I thought that question was very well said at the end by Riley Gaines. It seems we've reached a point where it's okay to make someone unhappy or uncomfortable as long as we're appeasing someone else that happens to be one of the smallest of minorities in the country with transgender people. Preserve their rights, and their rights also extend to doing things that aren't fair and don't make any sense. As long as we don't upset them, who cares about female athletes? Who cares about women involved? I thought that was very well said by Riley with the question she posed.
Yeah, I think that's kind of been the argument all along, is that this is called women's sports for a reason, because they belong to women, and women have been fighting to have an equal right to play sports and have a space that's theirs and feel comfortable in it. And it, belongs to them for so long. And now it just takes a few mediocre male athletes to say that they want to change their identities and identify as a different gender to come in and literally ruin decades and decades of groundwork that has been laid. It's just really ridiculous. And just seeing Leah Thomas in that bathing suit, you just saw the picture up just now, is a very stark reminder of how women and men are completely different biologically. Just the wingspan, the broadness, the height, the strength. It's really just pretty disgusting.
No, I'm completely with you, and she's right about protecting female athletes. And oftentimes, what we don't ask in this country right now is, what's fair? What is fair? What's right in this situation? And this has always been one of those to me, Charly, that it's very clear what is fair and right. And sometimes the way things have been done for a long time is the right way to do it. Being progressive doesn't mean funneling out of situations that were fair and just and right within the rules just to move on to something else. We've had a separation of men's and women's and boys and girls sports in this country for many, many years. There's a reason for that. It's because it's the right thing to do. And I think we've kind of lost sight in this story of what's right and wrong from some perspectives. And kudos to Riley Gaines, who will join us on Monday on the show, for bringing to light some of these issues.
Yeah, well, this is just one example of the sick agenda of the current administration. It doesn't just pertain to sports. This pertains to the classroom too. I mean, you have now entire school systems that want to do away with the teaching of biology as it's been taught forever. Because at the end of the day, there are only two genders. There's male and there's female, and that's not determined by your feelings or emotions. or what stage you are in your life. That is determined by your chromosomes, and you can't change those. I just think it's disgusting that we have a group of people who is out to do nothing but indoctrinate our children. And it's just something that I don't see stopping. It's going to keep infiltrating every aspect of our life until we tell these people to shut up, and we get conservatives to start speaking out more.
Well, and look, I don't think this is a conservative liberal issue. I wish it wasn't. It's a human issue. Like I know plenty
the problem is that most of the time it's only the conservatives who have most of the common sense now these days.
No, well, conservatives the only one. You're right. Conservatives are the ones who will say it. But
let me also just say,
I know plenty of liberal people who come up to me and say, by the way, I totally agree with Riley Gaines and that men shouldn't be competing with women, but they feel like they're playing into a conservative right-wing agenda if they say it publicly. But they do believe that.
That's what's crazy about it, though, is because if you identify as conservative today, it doesn't even mean you are a true conservative. It just means you have some common sense, because whereas 5 years ago, a lot of these beliefs that we are debating now, if you would have said, oh, yeah, men and women shouldn't play in the same division, but you also had more left-leaning beliefs, you would be considered probably a moderate or even just left of center, right? It's not like we're talking about some like, oh my God, this is such a conservative right-wing agenda. This is a common sense issue. But now, because everything has gotten so polarizing and things have gotten so extreme, now if you fall on the side of, oh yeah, men and women don't belong in the same athletic space, or, oh yeah, there is only such thing as two genders, actually. How you can identify however you want. No one's saying you can't live your life the way you want. But at the end of the day, there are only two genders. There are only two sexes. And to believe that now is considered to be conservative, which just is indicative of the wild place that our country is in right now.
Well, and we've talked about this woman before, but Nancy R. Moore writes for USA Today. I firmly believe Nancy probably agrees with what we're saying about the separation of men's and women's sports, and that it's not necessarily fair for Leah Thomas to move to women's swimming and to win, where he wasn't winning before on the men's side. But once again, this has become an us versus them type argument. Earlier, she went off in a column about Sam Ponder, saying, well, not necessarily disagreeing with Sam Ponder, but Sam Ponder is only stating these things to mask her transphobia. Well, now Riley Gaines, appearing before the Senate judicial hearing, all Riley Gaines is doing is she's a part of a cottage industry of female media members that's using transgender athletes to become right-wing media celebrities. So now it's not, I completely disagree with you or you're wrong, Charly. It's, oh, well, you're just doing this for clicks. You're doing this for celebrity, and now you're becoming a celebrity media member because you're saying something that's very honest and true to her based on her experience.
You're preaching to the choir. This is the feedback I've gotten since joining Outkick and Fox, coming from ESPN, where we would never dare speak of anything like this. And that's why it's so insane, because it's just such a common sense issue. Nothing I'm saying is crazy. Nothing I'm saying is controversial. I'm saying that men should not play against women in sports. I'm totally fine with there being a third category if people don't feel comfortable competing against their own gender because they know they won't win. Because otherwise, here's the thing. If you're a man, even if you identify as a woman, you're still a man. So just compete with the men. That doesn't mean you still can't dress up or act like a woman or whatever, live your life the way you want. This is how it goes because you were biologically born this way. You have to compete. But the problem here is they want to win. They want the attention. They can't get the attention or win when they're competing against their biological sex because they're not good at their sport. So they're like, oh, what's a way that I can get attention and win a championship? Oh, I'll become a woman and I'll beat out all the women because it doesn't matter how hard they've worked or how much practice they've had. I'm still going to beat them. Even if I'm, ranked at the bottom of the men's division, I can still beat all of the women and be number one there. That's all it is.
Well, and it's alarming to me. Because common sense approach, if you are a reasonable person and you have a reasonable opinion on something and take, that has now been twisted into your reasonable opinion on this, your fact-based opinion is just to mask your hatred or just to mask your phobia about this person or these people or whatever it may be. I think a good example of that's what's going on in Major League Baseball. You alluded to this earlier, Charlie, but with all the Pride Night stuff, right? The Texas Rangers, the one team that's not doing it, that so quickly gets twisted into because you're not honoring this, you hate it. And I just think that's wrong. That's not the truth. Because I choose not to honor or celebrate something is not me saying you're not welcome or you're not a human or you're not entitled to every right in this country that I am, or that you're not able to come out to this baseball game and watch this first place baseball team. I'm not saying any of that, but we've twisted it somehow to state that, oh, because you're not going to sit there and honor it with a night or a month or whatever it may be, then you must hate this. And I think that's wrong.
It's totally wrong. And I think that's the furthest thing from the truth because, for example, me as a person, I have friends of every single kind. I'm telling you, there is not one person on this earth who identifies as something or other that I don't include in my friend group. Like, obviously, you're not as close as friends with everybody else, but that has nothing to do with how you identify or what you believe in, what your religion is, what your sex is, what your gender identity is, what your anything is. Like, if you are a good person, I'm cool with you. So it has nothing to do with that, but it's like, that's just like me saying like, hey, why don't the Dodgers do a night recognizing brunettes? Like, it's just, why do we have to recognize you based on your sexual orientation? I don't understand why we're getting into that. Who cares what you want to do in your bedroom? By all means. How you want to dress, great, go at it. How you want to talk, how you want to represent yourself. I don't care. But it doesn't mean we should go out of our way to recognize you or celebrate you. I'm not asking anyone to celebrate me for anything that I stand for, whether it be I'm a woman, I'm straight, it doesn't matter. It's just, I think people are just asking for too much. That's the problem. These people are attention seeking. It has nothing to do with anything else.